My name is Arthur. I turned 50 just 3 weeks before the night my heart decided to stop beating. I want to be very clear about something right from the start. I was not a mystic. I was not someone who spent his weekends meditating or reading about the afterlife. I was an architect. My life was built on structure, geometry, load-bearing walls, and deadlines. I dealt in concrete things, literally. If I couldn't touch it or measure it, I didn't have time for it. I had a mortgage that kept me up at night, 2 daughters in college who needed tuition, and a blood pressure prescription I frequently forgot to refill. I was a normal man, and on that Tuesday night in November, I was a dead man. It didn't happen in a dramatic way. There were no car crashes, no heroic rescues. I was alone in my office, staring at a set of blueprints for a commercial complex we were building downtown. The office was quiet, just the hum of the HVAC system and the distant sound of traffic on the wet streets below. It was late, maybe past 10. I remember feeling a distinct irritation because my coffee had gone cold. That was my biggest concern in the world at that moment. Cold coffee and a deadline I was behind on. Then, the air in the room changed. It wasn't a sound. It was a pressure drop, like when you're on an airplane and your ears need to pop. But this was in the center of my chest. I rubbed my sternum, thinking it was indigestion. I'd eaten a terrible sandwich from the vending machine earlier, but the pressure didn't fade. It tightened. It felt as if a heavy iron hand had reached through my ribs and squeezed my heart into a fist. I tried to stand up. That was my first mistake. The moment I put weight on my legs, the room tilted violently to the left. My vision went strange. It didn't go black immediately. Instead, it became incredibly sharp, almost hyper-real. I looked at the blueprint on my desk, and I could see the grain of the paper, the microscopic bleed of the ink. I saw the dust motes dancing in the light of the desk lamp. They looked like tiny diamonds. Then came the pain. It wasn't just in my chest. It was a bolt of lightning that shot up my jaw and down my left arm. It was so intense, it didn't even feel like pain anymore. It felt like information. My body was screaming a warning that was arriving too late. I collapsed. I hit the carpet hard. I remember being surprised by how rough the carpet fibers felt against my cheek. I was lying there, cheek pressed to the floor, staring at the wheels of my office chair. I tried to call out, to shout for the security guard who made rounds on the floor, but my lungs refused to draw air. It was as if the command to breathe had been deleted from my brain. Fear washed over me, cold and absolute. I thought about my wife, Sarah. I thought about the text message I hadn't replied to yet. She had asked me to pick up milk on the way home. The banality of it terrified me. I'm going to die, I thought. And the last thing on my mind is a gallon of milk. The darkness didn't sweep in from the edges. It rose up from inside me. The humming of the HVAC system faded into a long, low tone, like a cello string being bowed slowly. My heart gave one last chaotic flutter, a bird trapped in a cage, and then silence. Absolute silence. But here is where the story truly begins. Because while Arthur the architect lay on the floor, turning blue, I was suddenly standing up. I didn't stand up with my legs. I simply became upright. The pain was gone. The tightness in the chest vanished. I felt lighter than I had felt since I was a child. I looked down, expecting to see my shoes, but instead, I saw my body. I saw myself. It is a deeply disturbing thing to see your own body from the outside. It looked like a suit I had just taken off and discarded. I looked grey. My mouth was slightly open. One arm was twisted awkwardly under my torso. I felt a strange detachment, a curiosity. I thought, that man looks exhausted. I didn't feel like him anymore. I wasn't Arthur with the mortgage and the bad back. I was consciousness. I was a point of awareness suspended in the air. I floated upward, drifting toward the ceiling. I could see the top of the bookshelves, the dust that had gathered there over the years. I passed through the ceiling tiles as if they were made of mist. I rose up through the floors of the building, passing through concrete and steel, seeing the wiring and the pipes like the veins of a great beast. I emerged onto the roof. The night air should have been freezing. It was November, but I felt no temperature. I saw the city skyline spread out around me, the grid of lights, the flow of cars like red and white blood cells moving through arteries. But the city was fading. The lights were dimming. The world of matter, the world of 2025, was becoming translucent. A fog was rolling in, but it wasn't weather. It was a veil. I turned around, and I realized I wasn't alone on the roof. Standing near the edge, looking out over the sleeping city, was a figure. It wasn't glowing with white light. It wasn't a deceased relative waiting to hug me. It was a silhouette, darker than the night sky, tall and draped in something that looked like woven shadows. It turned to face me. It had no face, only a depth. I should have been terrified. In movies, this is the Grim Reaper. This is the monster. But I didn't feel fear. I felt a profound sense of recognition. I knew, in the way you know the sun is warm without touching it, that I was standing before the entity that guards the threshold, the angel of death. It didn't speak with a voice. It spoke with thought, vibrating directly into the center of my being. The structure has collapsed, it said, but the tenant remains. I realized it wasn't talking about the building. It was talking about me. The presence of this entity was overwhelming. It wasn't evil, and it wasn't good. Those words felt too small, too human. It felt inevitable. It felt like the force of gravity, something that just is, something you cannot negotiate with. I stood there, or hovered there, on the edge of reality. The city below had vanished completely now. We were in a space that was neither dark nor light. It was a slate-grey void, endless and quiet. "Am I dead?" I asked. My communication wasn't in English. It was instantaneous. I projected the concept of the question, and the answer arrived before I finished thinking it. "You are in the pause," the entity replied. "The space between the inhale and the exhale." I looked at the entity, this angel of death, and I felt a strange compulsion to explain myself. I wanted to defend my life. I wanted to tell it about the buildings I designed, the family I raised, the taxes I paid. I wanted to prove I had value. "I have things to finish," I said. "It's not time. The year isn't over. I have plans." The entity moved closer. It didn't walk. It simply magnified in my vision until it occupied my entire field of view. The darkness of its form wasn't empty. It was full of swirling patterns, like oil on water, shifting and changing. "Plans," the voice echoed. It sounded almost amused, but without malice. "You cling to time as if you own it. You measure your life in calendars. You look ahead to next week, next month, next year." Suddenly, the grey void around us shifted. It became a screen, a panoramic view of my life. But it wasn't a highlight reel of birthdays and weddings. It was a montage of moments I had ignored. I saw myself sitting at the dinner table, looking at my phone while my daughter was telling me about her day. I saw the light in her eyes dim as she realized I wasn't listening. I saw myself arguing with my wife over money, the stress lines on her face that I had chosen not to see because I was too focused on being right. I saw myself driving to work, angry at the traffic, my mind completely absent from the miracle of being alive, breathing, and seeing the sunrise. "You have been dead for a long time, Arthur," the entity said. "You stopped living years ago. You became a machine of routine. You traded the present moment for anxiety about a future that does not exist." The truth of it hit me harder than the heart attack. It was a spiritual crushing. I realized that my near-death experience wasn't just about my body failing. It was about my soul having withered. I had been sleepwalking through the most precious years of my life. I felt a deep shame. "I didn't know," I whispered. "I thought I was being responsible. I thought I was providing." "Provision is not presence," the entity answered. You built walls to protect your life, but you walled yourself out of it. The realization was agonizing. I wanted to weep, but I had no eyes for tears. I felt the weight of every "I love you" I hadn't said, every sunset I hadn't watched, every moment of joy I had postponed for later. Is this judgment? I asked. There is no judgment here, the entity said. Only clarity. You are seeing what you built. You are the architect, are you not? The irony stung. I designed spaces for people to live in, but I hadn't inhabited my own life. Then the mood shifted. The entity extended what looked like a hand, a limb of shifting shadow. It pointed into the distance of the void. You speak of plans, the entity said. You speak of the future. You worry about your retirement. You worry about the years to come. Do you wish to see what comes? Do you wish to see the year you are so desperate to reach? I knew it was talking about the future. I knew it was offering me a glimpse. Yes, I said. Show me. The grey mist swirled violently. A wind picked up, a wind that blew through the soul. The darkness parted, and I saw a date burning in the air like neon fire. 2026. The entity stood beside me. Look, it commanded. Look at what approaches. I peered into the vision. I expected to see my family. I expected to see myself older, maybe retired. But what I saw gave me chills that I can still feel today, sitting here in this chair. If you're listening to this and you feel a heaviness in your chest, take a breath. It is not an accident that you are hearing this story. We often think we have endless time, but sometimes we are given a pause just so we can remember how to breathe. I was looking at 2026, but it wasn't a vision of flying cars or apocalyptic fires. It was something far more unsettling because of how quiet it was. The vision showed me the world, but the frequency was different. I saw millions of people, but they were stopped. It wasn't a pandemic lockdown. It wasn't a war. It felt like a psychic pause, a global holding of breath. I saw a great stillness falling over humanity. The noise, the constant digital noise, the political screaming, the endless distraction that we live in right now, had been cut. It was as if someone had pulled the plug on the machine of modern society. What is this? I asked the entity. Why is it so quiet? The correction, the entity replied. Its voice was heavy, like stone grinding on stone. 2026 is the year the noise stops. It is the year of the great sobering. I watched as the vision zoomed in. I saw people walking in the streets, but they looked different. They weren't looking at their phones. They were looking at each other. They looked stunned, stripped of their illusions. I saw financial systems flickering, not necessarily collapsing into ruin, but being revealed as hollow. I saw institutions that we trust blindly today crumbling, not from outside attack, but from the weight of their own lies. The entity spoke again. For decades, your species has run from silence. You fill your ears, your eyes, and your minds with distraction to avoid facing your own souls. In 2026, the distraction fails. I felt a wave of terror. Is it a disaster? It is a revelation, the angel said. For those who are asleep, it will feel like the end of the world. For those who are awake, it will feel like the beginning. The entity showed me specific things. I saw nature reacting violently, not just storms, but the earth itself shaking, demanding to be heard. I saw a shift in the way people connected. The superficial friendships, the online avatars, they all evaporated. People were forced to rely on their neighbors, their families, their actual physical communities. I saw myself, or the potential of myself, in 2026. I looked older, tired, but there was a fire in my eyes that I hadn't had in 20 years. I was working with my hands. I was planting something in the ground. I wasn't designing glass towers. I was building shelter. The year 2026 is the threshold, the entity told me. It is the year you decide if you want to be human or if you want to be a product. The systems you rely on will tremble. Only what is real will remain. This was the revelation. This was the secret. We are approaching a point where the artificiality of our lives is going to break. The comfort we have is fragile. The entity turned to me, its form looming large. You wanted to go back, Arthur. You said you had plans, but your plans are for a world that is dying. If you return, you cannot go back to sleep. You must prepare. Prepare for what? I asked. How do I prepare? Not with fear, it said. Fear is the disease. You prepare by becoming real. You prepare by mending the bonds you broke. You prepare by learning to listen to the silence now before it is forced upon you. I looked at that year, 2026, hovering in the mist. I felt a tremendous resistance. I didn't want to go back to that. I didn't want to face the difficulty. Standing there in the void, wrapped in the presence of this ancient being, I felt safe. The truth was hard, but it was clean. I don't want to go back, I said. It looks hard. It looks painful. It is necessary, the angel of death said. The birth is always painful. Humanity is being born. You are being born. I tried to back away. I tried to float back into the grey peace. Let me stay. I've seen enough. I'm tired. The entity reached out. For the first time, it touched me. The touch was freezing cold and burning hot at the same time. It touched the center of my chest, right where the heart attack had begun. You are not done, it boomed. The voice vibrated through the universe. You have seen the coming storm. Now go and build something that can withstand it. The sensation of the push was violent. It felt like being shot out of a cannon. The grey void shattered like glass. The vision of 2026 exploded into a billion fragments of light. I fell. I fell through the darkness, screaming without a voice, tumbling down from the heights of awareness back into the heavy, dense, painful world of matter. The return was brutal. It wasn't a gentle waking up. It was a collision. I felt like I had been dropped from a 10-story building onto a concrete slab. The first thing I knew was pain. My chest felt like it had been kicked by a horse. My ribs ached. My throat was raw. Then came the noise, beeping, shouting, the smell of antiseptic and burnt ozone. Clear! My body convulsed. I gasped, a ragged, desperate intake of air that burned my lungs. My eyes flew open, bright, harsh fluorescent lights. A face hovering over me, covered in a blue mask, eyes wide with panic and focus. We got a rhythm! Someone shouted. He's back! BP is stabilizing. I tried to speak, but there was a tube in my throat. I tried to move, but my arms were strapped down. I was back. I was back in the meat suit. I was back in the heavy, hurting world. Tears streamed down my face, hot and stinging. The paramedics were moving me. I was on a stretcher, bouncing down a hallway. The ceiling tiles flashed by, 1, 2, 3, just like the ones I had floated through moments ago. But now I was trapped beneath them. I spent 3 days in the ICU and another week on the cardiac floor. The doctors told me I was lucky. They said it was a widowmaker blockage, that I had been clinically dead for nearly 4 minutes. They talked about stents, beta blockers, and lifestyle changes. They talked about cholesterol. I lay in that hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, and I couldn't care less about cholesterol. I was haunted by the vision. I was haunted by the date, 2026. When my wife, Sarah, came to visit, I broke down. I grabbed her hand and held it so tight her knuckles turned white. I didn't tell her about the hospital food or the pain. I just looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in years. I saw the grey in her hair, the love in her eyes, the fear she had felt losing me. I'm sorry, I sobbed. I've been gone for so long. She thought I meant the coma. I knew I meant the last 10 years. It has been 6 months since that night. I am physically recovered, but I am a different man. I quit the firm. I couldn't look at the blueprints anymore. The idea of building glass towers for corporations felt absurd to me after what I had seen. I started a smaller practice, designing sustainable homes, working with my hands again. I spend my weekends in the garden. I listen to my daughters. I don't look at my phone when I'm with people. But the chill remains. I know what is coming. I feel the year 2026 approaching like a freight train in the distance. I see the signs of it every day in the news. The fragility, the noise, the desperation. People are running faster and faster, trying to outrun the silence. I am not afraid, though. That's the gift the angel of death gave me. I'm not afraid of the collapse because I know it is a correction. I know that what falls away is only the false stuff. I'm sharing this story now because I need you to know. Don't wait for your heart to stop to start living. Don't wait for the world to go quiet to find your own silence. The angel told me to build something that can withstand the storm. He didn't mean a bunker. He meant a soul. He meant a life built on truth, on connection, on love that doesn't need a Wi-Fi signal. We have a little time left before the shift. Use it. Look at the people you love. Forgive the petty grudges. Put down the distraction. The structure is shaking, but the tenant, the soul, is eternal. My name is Arthur. I died in 2025, and because of that, I am finally ready for 2026.